Welcome. I'm your host, Dustin,
I'm my co-host Aaron.
and today we are welcoming Adam Stovall, the director and writer of A Ghost Waits, onto our interview series within the Barrens. Adam, thank you for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
I know we just went through some technical issues, but you know what? It's all for the game, right? We're,
Yeah.
we're doing it because we do what we love, so we have to endure on some of these things, unfortunately. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of say that I really enjoyed your film. I saw it on Shutter. I know we said that it was on. It came on Shutter a little less than 2 months ago. I know that you're also part of Arrow Video, which is really really cool. I actually just bought my physical copy of this from Arrow as well.
Yay!
So that should be coming in hopefully within the next week or so. I've been
That
trying.
Blu-ray is my baby. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, with all the features and stuff that I was reading, I was like, wow, this is definitely worth like the $28 it's on right now because that's so good. I mean, obviously you can stream it on Shudder pretty much for free for like their $7 package, but I love getting like commentary tracks as of late. So I
Just
really
the
want.
tangibility.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I like holding things. I'm a very like physical copy person. Like I buy vinyls of movies or any kind of like weird things they have coming out. So I'm probably gonna go and see if there's any other things. Unless you can tell me if there is any other like little things that are connected to Ghost Waits. I wasn't sure if there was any. You guys had like any soundtracks or anything out like that for the film, or if it was just the physical release of Arrow Video.
there, there isn't a soundtrack available. There's a merch store uh,
Okay.
that you can get like T-shirts and coffee mugs
Oh
and
hell yeah.
sweatshirt like hoodies. But yeah, there's no soundtrack release because honestly, like when we made the movie, it was so small, and I was the one putting everything together. Which is why now I tell like whenever I'm asked, like, do you have advice for aspiring filmmakers? Like, yeah, get a lawyer. Like trust me, you want them negotiating everything because I was asking friends for songs and never secured like soundtrack rights. So like, all right, well.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to ask you too, because there kind of is like a song that plays throughout the whole movie, like kind of periodically. So was that something that you were writing, or was it something that Mcleod was writing, or was it kind of like something that was all together? Because he was the one who was performing on it, correct?
Yes, so it's Yellow Cotton Dress by the band Wussy. Um, that's a pre-existing song. It's off their first album, Funeral Dress. I've known Wussy since before they were a band.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, and originally, so the song wasn't supposed to recur. The song played during like when he's working on the house. It's just kind of a montage soundtrack, and it was going to be a different song. I'd asked a friend, and he was game, but like he never responded to the emails when I was asking, hey, we need permission. Like we need you to like
Yeah, yeah.
officially say that we have this the rights to the song. And he just never responded. And we got through principal photography, we were doing pickups, and that was when we realized that we had to kind of expand on um him singing. Originally was just like making up little songs as he worked around the house, and it wasn't landing for people, so we are just like, okay, we're gonna need to just put a spotlight on him singing for a second, and figured out how to make that work with Muriel. So that's how that scene where he's playing the song comes about. But of course, if he's playing the song, we really need to have it secured. And
Exactly.
again, that the previous song, like I never got it. So I just messaged my friend Mark Messerly, who's in Wussy, like, hey, can we use a Wussy song? And 15 minutes later, he was like, yep, talk to Chuck and Lisa, it's good.
Awesome.
And that's, it was, and I just always loved Yellow Cotton Dress, and it worked so well for the movie. So Mcleod and I went out to a pawn shop and bought a guitar so he could learn to play it so that he could play it in the movie. Yeah.
That's awesome. I do like that song too, and I need to go check out some of the other stuff they have on there because it's just really catchy, and I feel like it really kind of helps tell the story of this film too, with what the song's pretty much about and whatnot. Because it's this movie, as everybody's saying online, is like a romantic comedy mixed with horror, and yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it's telling a love story, a very unconditional and untraditional love story. Because I mean, Do you ever hear anybody say, "Yeah, I am in love with a ghost, and and I want to be with that ghost"? You don't really hear or even see movies that kind of tell a story like this. So I have to, praise you for doing something that is very different.
Thank you. There's a movie called The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, 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 where lady moves into a house and the ghost of like an old sea captain like lived there and died there and it haunts it, and they strike up a relationship and he basically just waits for her to die of natural causes. But yeah, I think in the writing of this, like, and I don't know if we're gonna get into spoilers or not, but like
Yeah, we
the
can do
the
whatever you want. It's your
yeah
movie, so if you want to do some spoilers, let's do it. I'm
I'm
sure
yeah I'm
everybody's seen it
down.
at this point, so.
Right. No, like the ending, I've been asked a few times now if I was ever worried about the response to the ending, and I wasn't. Partially because it's a movie and the metaphor, like he's basically moving to Denver for a girl.
Yeah,
Because that's the thing of like if you're telling a ghost story, the tacit implication is that there's an afterlife.
exactly.
So yeah,
That's,
but it
that's
was a thing that I hadn't seen. And I
yeah,
myself have struggled with depression and suicidal ideation in my life. So that was actually what I was wanting to do with the movie, was talk about my experience of depression and suicidal ideation, because I'd never seen it represented in film. It's always like bipolar disorder or manic depression, where it's very dramatic and it's a very external representation of an internal process. Whereas like to me, depression is just like wallpaper that like tells you you don't deserve a house.
yeah,
That's a good way to
So
put it, though.
yeah.
Honestly,
yeah. I've definitely gone through my spells of depression. Aaron, I know you kind of
I struggled with it my whole life.
yeah, you're taking a lot of things for it right now, and I always thank you for coming over here and doing this podcast, because I know it's a lot. Aaron's got like he's got a little bit of social anxiety, so doing this sometimes is
A little bit.
it's a little bit hard for him, but
I feel
he's gotten so much better, and I feel like this podcast has actually really helped you kind of build yourself too,
A little bit,
which is really
definitely.
cool. And also being able to talk to people like you, Adam, that are making movies and things that we watch that we love is it's always like a boost too of being out of the norm, because when you're doing the same thing every single day, obviously depression and all those thoughts that you have of like suicide or anything like that can be a bit daunting. But once you start breaking
right.
out and doing something that's a little bit different,
Can help.
like a podcast or making music or directing a movie, it can definitely help you break out of that. So
My late 20s, I had a pretty severe depression in the last 4 years of my 20s. And the thing that finally got me on the path to getting out of it is my so my dog died.
oh
She was 16 years
no.
old, and it was just me and her in the apartment. And like she was old, and I would get home from my third shift job and like watch whatever I'd recorded the night before, and she would just kind of wander around the apartment or lay in the bed. But when I watched Friday Night Lights, she would actually get on the couch next to me and like put her head on my leg and watch Friday Night Lights with me. And so the first time I watched Friday Night Lights after she died, I just like felt so alone
Oh
in my one bedroom
no.
apartment in Cincinnati that I was like, I gotta move, or like I don't think I'm gonna make it. And
No.
so I sold some stuff. I moved to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody. In fact, I didn't even have an address to give the movers. I was just like, just get to LA and call me. I'll have a place by then. But once I got to Los Angeles, I was like, well, I'm not going to move 2,500 miles and then stay in my room. I'm going to feel pretty stupid if I do that. And like that self shaming is what got me out of the house.
Mhm.
And I started volunteering in a screening series for Creative Screenwriting Magazine. And I did that for a few months. They invited me to write an article. They were happy with it. And I ended up writing for them for years. And
That's
that was kind of
awesome.
the first step of my film education. But it was that thing of like, I kind of had to get out of my head and out of my room. And I was engaged with the filmness of it all. I was
Yeah.
talking to filmmakers. It was really exciting. And then print died and I went into production. But like, even making this movie, I had kind of gotten back to a low point. I was feeling like an existential mistake, like I didn't have a place in the world, and it was getting to the point. It was getting really severe, um, and I remember thinking like the only thing I've ever really known is that I want to make a movie. So I need to do that. And I know I'm not going to get a lot of money, but like, you can't make that an excuse. It's just a limitation. And so all I was really worried about was, I want to know if I can make a good movie, because if I can't, I don't have a backup plan. I had no thought about festivals and distributors and everything else. It was just like, if nothing ever happens, I want to be able to look at it 10 or 20 years later and still be proud of it and know that like I gave it my best shot. And that weirdly, like, with the stakes being life or death, because I was just like, oh, I'll just take myself off the table if this doesn't work. It like lowered the stakes elsewhere, where I was just like, no, like, who cares? We're gonna play some jazz and make a movie, and like, we know we don't have money and we don't have a lot of resources, but I have great collaborators. Mcleod Andrews is just like a god amongst men, and I had a support network where I was like staying with my dad and editing, and I didn't have a job at the time, but he was just like, it's fine, just like edit, you're good. Yeah, like I always had, it's a remarkable privilege to get to make a movie, but like I had the support network that allowed me to do it, because I didn't have any of the kind of traditional resources, because we made this movie for like $44,000.
Oh, okay, that actually just answers our question. We was going to ask you what your budget was.
But yeah, nowadays that's almost nothing, right? For a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because like Mcleod has made some movies for like $13,000, and it's like, oh, like you couldn't get your budget down even farther, and I'm like, man, like there's almost no difference. Like the difference is I had to buy some equipment and other people don't. I had to buy the computer that I edited the movie on, that I taught myself to edit on. I had to buy a camera that I remember our UPM saying like, we should sell that and then we can afford another PA or something. And that camera ended up being how we were able to do the pickups that made the movie the movie that you've seen now, as opposed to the much worse version that I saw in the assembly cut. And I was like, oh God, oh no.
But that being said, like, so how did your experience differ, like playing different roles, like throughout, like in different projects, like going from producing to directing or just acting, or like you said, you were a journalist for a while, seeing like the business from different perspectives. What was it like?
It's really, I think it's cool to have a very holistic view of the entire process. Starting as a journalist, the really cool thing, and I mean, you guys know, you have a podcast, obviously, you talk to filmmakers, like it's so cool to be able to ask the questions you want to ask. Like, I don't care what it's like to work with George Clooney unless I'm working with George Clooney. Like, I don't need to know about like how fun the set was. Like, no, like what was the seed of the idea? How do you know when you're finished? What's the like, there's so many little details in it, and so many. It's a horribly inefficient process. So it was really cool to get to talk to the filmmakers and just and dig in, because I would do long interviews. Getting to talk to Lars von Trier for an hour, or Pedro Almodovar for an hour, or whatever, and just not worrying about like, you do a little bit of research and you see like the stories they've told a million times, and you're just like, okay, we're not going to go with that. Like, what have I not heard? And then moving from that into production, I was a PA on a few TV shows, and then I got a job on a feature. It was an independent feature, another no budget film that I was supposed to be like key PA or something. I ended up being the second AD just because like Battlefield promotions. First feature gig. Had never worked on a feature before. Second AD. So, but that was amazing, because that's like a front row seat, because you're right there. You're a key element of production, but you're at a slight remove. And so I got to see where money goes, and where it goes out of habit versus where it needs to go. And so when it came time for Mcleod and me to make a Ghost Waits, I remember. Actually, this was before Ghost Waits. I remember like sitting down with Mcleod and having this very like existential conversation about what a movie is. And I was like, it's a scene, it's people to play the scene, it's a place that the scene happens, and recording implements to document the playing of said scene. Anything else is indulgence.
Yo, so you broke it down to bare bones.
Yeah, keeping it straight to the point.
Yeah, because it is like, especially as a journalist, you're catching people in a marketing phase, like they're promoting their film, they've got their stories, and so you get that version of things. You get that kind of like, oh, we're all done now and it's finished and we know what it is and now we're going to see if people like it. And then being there during production when it's just like, well, let's like, what the hell, let's see if this works. Like it was kind of amazing. And so by the time we got to, set to make a Ghost Waits, and there was no prep on the movie, we didn't have money for prep, so there was no shot list, there was no table read, there were no rehearsals, like anything. Mcleod and Natalie met on set. The first thing they ever shot together is the scene where she sings to him at the end.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We just dove in.
Quite a way to meet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She got in and had to go right into a makeup test, and he was shooting a scene that's no longer in the movie. So like it was basically like, hi, and then she was 25 feet away while he's talking to a dead dog. The movie changed a lot over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, especially because this was like such a non-traditional thing, like every step of it, a lot of friends, a lot of putting out like, hey, who wants to be in a haunted house movie, like for the montage at the end, or the pizza guy like just putting stuff out on Facebook, like asking friends like, who's free on this day and wants to be in a haunted house movie.
That's awesome.
And you just kind of stay loose and you're like, all right, well, this is what we got, so let's make it work instead of, oh, it sucks that we don't have this. It's like, well, we don't have lots of things.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the beauty of independent filmmaking, is that you're not tethered by all these big wigs and stuff, that you can do that type of stuff. I'd be like, hey, anybody local want to come and do a movie? Like we have some people over here that do a lot of like Facebook calls. I'm like, hey, we're making a movie, we need some extras. And it's all low budget indie filmmaking, and I think it's way better.
But it gives it a lot of charm,
It does. Like, I like big movies. Don't get me wrong. I like movies that cost a lot of money. I think we all do.
Sure.
But I've always had a really, really soft spot for indie filmmaking, because they always go in directions that these big companies are so afraid to go in. And the Ghost Waits is definitely one of those. I don't think a big company would have been like, hey, let's make this movie. I don't think
no,
this definitely would not have happened.
No, if there's a company involved, there's no way that ending survives.
No.
Like, no, and like I remember saying to Mcleod at one point, instead of lamenting that we don't have more money, like if you have a small budget, it makes it easier to recoup it. So instead of having to worry about the 4 quadrants, you can worry about 2 or 1, or as I like to say, we made a movie for 9 people. It turns out it's more than 9, but like I just said, I was like, let's make something that's as specific as possible, because that's what you have. Like when you don't have money and you don't have resources and you don't have the support that a studio or a company gives you, what you have are your instincts and your flexibility.
Yep.
And you can say something like, this is a very honest, very personal, story, but like, and it's why I never worried about how people would interpret the ending, is because it's like, well, I stand behind what I said. Like it's a very honest thing, and I know that like I'm not a provocateur, I don't want to say anything to shock people, but I also think that like we need to get better at having difficult conversations.
I agree
and
on
so
that 100%.
Yeah. And that scares the living shit out of marketing departments.
Yep.
So you don't get to do that if you have to recoup $100 million, obviously. But if you make a movie for less than the cost of a Mercedes, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Exactly. And that's another thing I wanted to ask too, is because I love black and white films. So
yeah, me too.
Was there a reason that you guys wanted to go black and white? Was it because of the budget, or was it to do with enhancing how the makeup looks? Or was it just because you're like, hey, let's just do a black and white film because I think this would be awesome?
honestly, the last one, like I in prep, I remember saying at one point, like, I think I'd like to make this black and white because I also just I love the black and white aesthetic. And my UPM said, no, absolutely not, for good reason, because like it's a really hard sell. Black and white's a really hard sell. We got a lot of no's from festivals and distributors just
Oh,
because it's
really?
black and white. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised by that. For
So
festivals? Wow.
yep. So we shot it in color, and we had a plan for the ghost makeup to apply some effects in After Effects. I think I still have the test image on my computer somewhere, but the plan was to do it in color. But then because like we did principal photography over 12 days in August 2016, and then we did 4 days of pickups in April 2017 and 4 days of pickups in February 2018.
Oh,
And
wow.
Mike Potter shot principal photography, but I shot the pickups. And he had a minimal lighting rig. I was shooting available light almost every scene. The only
Okay.
scene that's not available light is the second dream where uh, bartender Mcleod and Jack.
That's a great scene.
Thank you. That was the last thing we shot in the
Really?
movie.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love that
and
scene.
it's I really enjoy it too. He's so good. But like, and it's the only special effect in the movie is like the most basic photographic effect in the world. We just,
Yeah.
it's super fun. But yeah, so we shot all that stuff, and then the image wasn't quite as consistent as I wanted it to be. There was slight fluctuations in light, and I was in color correction. I was trying to match it. I was driving myself crazy. And then one day Mcleod was just like, "Hey, have you thought about making it in black and white?" It's like, I have. And so we dropped black and white LUT on it, which is a color correction algorithm. And the second we saw it in black and white, especially the second we saw Muriel in black and white, it was like, oh, this is the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything pops in this movie in black and white. I mean, I would like to see a colored version too, but we don't need that with this. It's perfect the way it is in black and white. Because it's all one location. It's not like it bounced around going to 10 million other places, and having to
Right.
readjust certain lighting to make the black and white, kind of stand out. So I think it was a genius idea, kind of going with that.
Thank you. And to it kind of goes back to your earlier question as well, that like, what was it like to wear all these different hats in production, whether it's writing, directing, producing, editing, craft services, whatever, shooting, like it never really felt like I was wearing different hats because everything was in service of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was kind of one of the biggest lessons in the whole process was when you make a movie, the movie is the boss. You are not the boss of the movie, and the movie will tell you what it needs. You just have to listen. And sometimes that means, people always say like you have to, kill your babies, like, you have to get rid of your favorite bits. Like there's a lot of that, but yeah, a lot of it's just like
it happened naturally, basically.
Yeah, we had some really good ideas that we had to cut because they just didn't fit. That they broke the spell of the movie. So that's that. To answer that, I meant to like circle back around to that question. Like,
That's all good.
It all just kind of felt like the same hat.
That's good though, that you weren't feeling like you were really out of the ordinary when you were kind of going through multiple stages of production and stuff. So that's good.
No, I mean like I definitely felt weird just as a person doing that because it's like I'd never edited anything before. I had tried to direct a short film. It fell apart in spectacular fashion. I had tried to direct a music video. It got caught up in a company dissolving. So I had actually never directed a film of any kind before. I had directed some sketch comedy and a little bit of theater, but the strongest foundation that I had was writing. And so I just kind of kept going back to writing in my head of like, okay, well, this is the point of the scene. This is the point of the character. So how do we convey this? And I remember telling, Mike Potter one time was like, what's like the visual reference for this movie? And I was like, I don't know, scenes from a marriage. Like think Ingmar Bergman, because Ingmar Bergman was great at just like dynamic, simple visuals. There's actually my favorite shot in the entire movie. I call it the persona shot. It's Mcleod turns and like Natalie's in profile, and it looks like a shot in persona, and I love it to death. But yeah, like it all kind of came back to just like simplicity. Like, let's not dress everything up, because like I watch a lot of movies, and especially like modern American independent films. I feel like you can see the movies they wish they were making.
Yeah.
There's just constant references, and my rule is never remind the audience they could be watching a better movie.
That's one way to do it. That's good marketing right there.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just like, let's do something that doesn't exist, because we may, I'll probably never get to make another black and white movie. I'll probably never get to end the movie. Like, just there's so many things that I'll never get to do again. So it's like, well, let's not waste the one time,
just go
one
for
chance
it.
we have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, just throw it all at it. Do you have any other projects that are in the works right now that you either want to work on or are being worked on?
I'm finishing up a script right now that has some interest, has like some real companies interested in it, which is daunting.
I can imagine.
Yeah, typically it's like I'm just like writing shit in my room, and then I'll send it to some friends, and I mean, sometimes it ends up being a movie, but like this is the first time, and we're being very deliberate with it. We're trying to apply all the lessons we learned on A Ghost Waits, because it's good. Like, it's the best idea I've ever had. It's a time travel road disaster movie.
Ooh, that sounds really interesting.
I've really enjoyed writing it. And as we get farther along in that process and get closer to the day when we go out to these companies or send it to these companies, I'm also preparing like how I will direct it, because A Ghost Waits, it's a miracle the movie works. Like, I did not know what I was doing, but like I trusted my collaborators and I listened to the film. And with this, you can't really go into meetings as like a potentially second time director, like, oh, like I don't really know, but we'll find it. Like, all they hear is just like, this kid's gonna get run over, like everybody's just gonna control him. So I am now like, this is the visual texture of the film, these are the tonal references, like this is what we're going with. I'm learning how to speak that language, which is not a thing that I do naturally.
You're always learning, and that's good,
Yeah,
especially with you wanting to do more projects and stuff. The more knowledge you have, the more people are going to pick you up, and I can't wait to see this next feature that you're teasing right now.
I know. Oh my God. If we get to make it, it's gonna. I just hope I don't screw it up.
Oh no, I don't think you will at all. I really don't think you will.
But you kind of mentioned that you always had like this desire to be in film and be a filmmaker. Is there any like particular movies you saw growing up that you that just confirmed it for you? You're like, I want to make movies.
Yeah, the first one that really did that was Back to the Future.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah, I have a very clear memory of being a very small child in the basement of our home, watching the network premiere of Back to the Future, during which they were going to show the first like footage from Back to the Future 2, and I had my little Back to the Future storybook and a little Chef Boyardee pizza, and I was just like, yeah. And then like it was very clear very early that I loved movies. So my parents love movies as well. So it's like, yeah, show the boy Jaws. Yeah, that, and I would just like, there for a while, I would see like Backdraft and want to be a firefighter, and you see Navy SEALs, you want to be a Navy SEAL. At some point, you're like, I think I just want to make movies. I don't think I actually want to do any of these jobs.
Yeah.
And then when I was a teenager, 2 movies really. MASH, which is over my shoulder, my dad showed it to me, and I honestly think it, like, when I think like what is cinema to me, it's MASH.
I hear a lot of people talk about MASH lately. I've been seeing that pop up everywhere, and I don't think I've seen it, but with a lot of the people that I see online and like friend circles talking about it, for some reason it's popping up a lot, and I need to go and watch MASH.
I love the idea that MASH is having a moment. Good. But the other one was, I think I was 16 years old, or maybe I was 15, and I was helping my dad's friend move into a house. It was my dad and me had gone down to help him, and so we moved, and then they would always like go to dinner and see a movie. And so we're sitting at like an Applebee's in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, and my dad's friend Jerry has the paper, and it's like, oh, I've heard Pulp Fiction is good. Do you want to see that? And so that
yes.
Pulp Fiction blew my mind when I saw it. Like the second it was over, I just turned around to them like, again. And I think like it's probably still the movie I've seen the second most in my life, because I've seen A Ghost Waits entirely too many times. But yeah, Pulp Fiction, like that was the one where it was just like, oh, cinema's like a lot more elastic than I thought. Like you can do all kinds of crazy shit in this. Like I want to do that. And I do. I got to thank Quentin Tarantino one day. Like, you set me on this path.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have any more? I have a bunch. I'm just making sure Aaron's going through all his questions.
Actually, that one kind of actually with mine.
Oh, there you go. I love when that happens. When you just ask one question and you can mark off all these other ones you have on your list. Like, okay, that one's good.
If you haven't noticed, I'm a bit of a talker, so that's
awesome.
That's perfect. I like to let our guests just kind of like ramble on, so because we learn so much more. Because like we have these questions, right? But sometimes they're just, I don't know, they're very basic. So when you can elaborate on like so many other things, it really like helps us understand you and what you do even more. I do have one question, because this movie kind of has a lot of tricky shots in it, I feel, especially when we talk about like the kitchen scene, like when he first sees Muriel and like all the cabinets are opening and closing. But I wanted to ask you, what was the trickiest shot that you had to film? Would it be the kitchen scene? I feel like it's probably that one, but maybe not.
That wasn't all that tricky. Like a lot of it is just you place the camera like specifically to that, because that's such a like horror trope, you know. Like I think it's like Paranormal Activity 3 that has a really good one of them. One of those with the camera on the oscillating fan base. And so it was just because Mcleod, like I can kind of get lost in the characters, and Mcleod would be like, hey, remember we're making a horror movie. Like, we should have some horror beats. And so that's just like, you set the camera, you record the cabinets, you have Mcleod walk in, walk out, and then open up everything, and then have him, you know, play that. One of the really tricky ones, there's probably a few. As far as like what I shot, the second dream, the bar center scene, because it's a very simple effect, you know, like you just shoot it and then you splice it and overlay, you know, you leave the camera running, basically you set it up, and that's why there's no available lights in that shot, is because any fluctuation in light stands out when you're kind of doing a split screen. So we had to cover anything and then light it with just like work lamps, essentially, that we got from Home Depot. But then I am his double, so I'm not even looking at the footage. I am playing his double so that he has somebody to play off of, and I'm a couple inches taller than Mcleod, so I'm like I'm hunching down just a little bit to be like perfect eye level, and I had to like remember lines and also just like make sure that the focus was locked, and you know, you have like a few things. I don't think I will ever star in a movie that I direct. I don't understand how people it's too much, it's too many headaches at once. But that one, we did a few takes of that just to really, because you also had to time it just right, you know, like I had to match his rhythms, because he's talking to himself. So you can't, like, there was no ear, but you know, can't put like a little earbud in or whatever and like have that play back. Like, we're doing it all live. So that was tricky. That was, and because it was the last day, like we had tried to shoot it. We were going to shoot the night before, and it started storming in Cincinnati, and it's an unfinished attic, so it was very loud. The rain. And so we checked the weather and it was going to stop overnight. So we came back at like 6 in the morning because he had a flight back to LA that morning. And like, we're like, we have to get this, like this literally this scene has to exist to get us this information. And which is actually a really good test, if you're like, if you want to make a movie, like go through the script and like, would you wake up at 6 a.m. to shoot this scene?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that was tricky. I didn't shoot it, but one that was really tough to get is when Rosie and Muriel come back and start messing with Jack, but it soon turns on Rosie. And that scene was tricky start to finish. Like writing it, I had to work really hard to get the turns in, and I don't know that I ever like really landed everything as well as I wanted to, but it got there enough that the scene worked. And then shooting it, there was like one element of, okay, this is a 2-shot because we're presenting as they're getting up on him, but then it has to go into 1-shots or close-ups because they're on their own, and we have to visually represent that they're on their own, and these two are teaming up and isolating her, and you're just shooting all these, and you're shooting like each character and then like a master. And it was, and I remember like Mike was just like wearing himself out shooting it because it was all handheld and he had his 4K. And like that one was just, it was so tricky to just get every single element to line up.
Yeah, that sounds like it was a headache. Oh man.
Yeah.
It's a great scene, but just hearing like the behind the scenes on that, wow.
Yeah.
It just makes you appreciate it that much more, the effort that went into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially on movies. I mean, like people work really hard on big movies, but on a movie this size, when you have like a crew of 4 most days,
everybody's doing multiple jobs.
Yeah, that's small.
And like Mcleod is wonderful. He can kind of switch between actor and producer mode, where he'll like help put up a C-stand and like bring coffee and then act in a scene. The only time I told him he couldn't do that was the scene after they drive Rosie away and then they kind of have feelings at each other. That was the only one where I told Mcleod, like, I need you to not produce today. Like, this is the headspace you need to be in. Protect that. Like, just be an actor today. But any other time he was doing everything. Mike was camera and grip department. Jim did sound. Like, he did not have a secondary. Like, Mike didn't have a secondary. Most days we didn't have a PA. The first half of the shoot we didn't have our UPM/first AD. Most days it was Madeline makeup, Mike camera, Jim sound, and me.
Wow.
And then whoever was acting that day.
Yeah. I mean, Mcleod does such a great job too, because like the first like half of, well, maybe not half, but like pretty close to it, is like it's all pretty much him alone and talking to himself. Like, yeah, we have like this this feeling of like there's something else there. We were already introduced to what this something else was, but he hasn't seen Muriel at this point, and he has to do all these things by himself. Very, very good acting on everybody in this film, especially him with having to hold all his scenes by himself for most of the time is very, very important, I feel, in acting now, especially if he goes on to make other films, when they can see that someone can hold their own,
because you don't have the other person to bounce off of.
If you can do a solo performance, I feel like that is so important in acting, and maybe even like any other like parts of filming, of being able to do something on your own and be able to carry it and make the film still have momentum, because it doesn't drop out at all. I was reading some reviews that people are saying, oh, the momentum's like all over the place. I don't agree on that at all. I think that it once it starts, it just keeps going up until you get to the very end and you just like this was a ride, and it was a good ride, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. So yeah, I really want him to know, and for you to know, and everybody else on the crew, that everybody did such a great job on this film. But I've watched it on Shudder like 3 or 4 times, and I'm probably gonna watch it again very soon, especially once my physical comes in.
Yeah, see all the sweet featurettes. No, like Mcleod is amazing. Like he's just an amazing actor. And we lived together for a while in Santa Monica. And I remember, like, one time we were working on his reel. So we're watching everything that he's done to, like, oh, let's pull that scene. And because he's so good, he was often asked to play characters who were either going crazy or had gone crazy.
Yeah.
And when you're watching them just like back to back to back, it's like, dude, you're really good, but like, come on, I want to see you fall in love and save the world. Like, you can do all this other stuff. And so once this became like a viable project, where, because we had tried to make another movie and couldn't get it off the ground. So once we had a budget and it was like, oh, this is going to happen, we got the budget before I had a finished script. So I very much wrote Jack for Mcleod, and Jack is pretty much a mixture of Mcleod and me. Yeah, like, and then and with Sydney, with Natalie, you know, with everybody else that we brought in, it was always like I would send them the script and just like, let's not talk about the script, let's talk about the character. You know, and I would just ask them questions. What kind of music do you think they listen to? How do you think they react to a car wreck? Like, just things where, because I think the job, like the actor's job is to know the character better than I do, because if the movie goes anywhere, they're going to be far more associated with the character than I ever will be. So like, they need to have it in their bones. But if they have it in their bones, it also is going to make things easier on set, because there's this idea of like, do a take for you and a take for me. But if we're on the same page as far as the character, every take is for us.
Yeah.
And you can play, and you kind of open yourself up to the little miracles that like really give a scene a spark.
Yeah, I agree on that a lot.
It all comes down to communication.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And since this is a horror film, were you always into horror? Was that a genre growing up that you were fond of? I know you were talking about, you know, like Back to the Future and Pulp Fiction, which those are more like action, adventure, sci-fi, and just batshit crazy films. Yeah. But yeah, have you ever really went into the horror genre at all?
When I was a kid, I dug Nightmare on Elm Street, and I watched on Friday nights. There would be Monsters, and then Nightmare Cafe, or Friday the 13th the series, or Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side. Not like those kind of shows would air late Fridays. But that was kind of the extent of it. I didn't really grow up a horror kid. I was much more of a comedy kid.
Okay.
And then in my 30s, I would visit my sister and her then husband, and he was a big horror kid. So I would visit, and he's like, "It's stupid that you've never seen Sisters." And so like every time I would visit, there would be movies to watch. And doing that, it's like, oh man, there's so much more to this genre than I thought. You know, and I started going to like Exhumed Fest with him, which is this like 24-hour horror and exploitation marathon in Philadelphia. And just, yeah, you kind of open yourself up, and I think it's, I was telling a friend the other day, horror is kind of like stand-up comedy. You know, if you love stand-up comedy, there's something about the rhythm that gets you, and even bad stand-up you can enjoy because it is the rhythm of stand-up. I think horror fans love the trappings of horror, but they also love the community around horror is so warm and welcoming, because it is like a nest of outsiders.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a bunch of people who grew up being told they were weird because their black t-shirt had a skull giving side eye. And then finally someday somebody was like, shop smart, shop S smart. And they're like, I'm not alone. Thank you.
Yes.
You know, so we all just kind of ride or die for this stuff because it made us feel less alone, which is the best thing you can do. So yeah, like I came to horror late. but I've been trying to catch up. I've
Me too.
It's
watching a lot of it.
It's a lot. Yeah, Aaron, I know we said on the show multiple times, but just to let you know is that Aaron, he likes horror. I'm like the more like I'm like
He's the horror
rooted
buff.
in horror. I mean, I was scared as a child. Like I didn't start breaking out of my shell until about like 15, 16. I'm really trying to embrace all these scary movies. I couldn't go into haunted houses from like the age of like 8 to 14. I couldn't do it. I was nope. I'd cry. I could barely watch any horror movies, but once I started really diving into it, I fell in love with it. Because like you're saying, it is very welcoming, especially now with like all the social media and even like you know friends groups that are maybe in your neighborhood. Because there are some like local gatherings of people who do like like movie nights and stuff like that. That's really really cool. That's local to us that I used to attend, and they would always show things I've never seen. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I love comedy too, and horror and comedy have always been, you know, buddies because they kind of thrive off the same thing, like you were just saying. And yeah, I just kind of fell in love with that. And then one day I was like, Aaron, do you want to do a show where you can watch a lot more horror movies and talk about them? He was like, yeah, dude. So here we are, and we just started recently doing interviews. What's it been like about 3 months now? So we've been starting to dive into doing a lot of interviews with either other podcasters, directors, actors, whoever it may be. And it was awesome, having you on and kind of talking about your whole career and seeing where you're at now, and letting you know that you did make a very good movie. And if anybody says otherwise, they're lying. They're lying.
Thank you very much.
A great film.
I appreciate that. It's not going to work for everybody, but it doesn't need to. And like no movie works for everybody. So I always say, especially if I meet somebody, they're like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie. It's like, I hope you like it. It's okay if you don't, but I hope you do. It's just, we've been extraordinarily lucky, I feel. And we worked really hard, but like, it's that saying of like, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Like the harder I work, the luckier I get. Like, but I also know plenty of people who work really hard and never get the opportunities that I've gotten. Exactly. So I'm very appreciative of that, and don't take it for granted at all. I'm earlier, like talking about the era of physical release. Like we got acquired towards the end of 2020, so I was still stuck inside, and my job went away because I used to direct audiobooks. And now everybody has a home studio, so nobody uses directors anymore. So I had just nothing going on, and Arrow acquired us and said, "Oh, we'd like to do some special features." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I got you." Like, because I'm a big, as you can see, I'm a big physical media guy, and it annoys me so much when I like pick up a disc and you flip to the back cover and it's like special features, the movie in 1080p and the trailer. You're like,
barely anything on it. And it's like $20. Like, this isn't even worth it. Might as well just rent it,
Right. So I wanted to make something like, I oversaw design and everything. Like I found Sister Hyde, who did the art, and it was just awesome, like, you want to make a cover. Thank you. We want to make a cover design that like stands out on the shelf, and then if you can get somebody to pick it up and look at the back, then it's like, and I want enough stuff that they like, all right, like if I've never heard of this movie, like this looks interesting. Like it's that kind of thing, because I've had that experience so much. It's like, I just want to like hook somebody who has no idea what it is.
On it.
Yeah. And now that you're on Shudder too, I know that's probably like another big like, wow, I can't believe that happened. But I think,
oh my god,
like we were saying, how I think that some of these streaming services are starting to kind of be buddy with some of these physical media outlets. I think it's a good thing for the industry right now.
Yeah.
I would love to see this on the big screen too, but watching it in my home and stuff like that is awesome.
I've gotten to see it in a couple theaters, and it's always pretty amazing.
Oh yeah.
But like, Shudder has brought a ton of eyes to it, but Aeroplayer, which is Arrow's streaming service, they actually have a lot of special features on the streaming service of their releases. So like Threshold has their behind the scenes documentary on there.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Oh my god, and it's all shot on an iPhone too. Like, damn, you do anything. See, you guys do anything.
Yeah. and it is just like, I think they are starting to have a much more copacetic relationship between the streamers. Like,
and I just got this one too, the stylist.
Oh, nice.
Arrow.
Chills movie. Yes.
Yeah, we just talked. I talked to her a couple weeks ago too, and that's on Shudder. So it's like you're in a great family right now of a bunch of really good films. So it's awesome to see that these films that have came out a couple years ago, but are starting to kind of resurface. Like yours came out technically in 2020, correct?
I mean, it had its world premiere and like festival premieres 2020. It was released in 2021, but we get called a 2020 movie, so
yeah. And now it's on Shudder, and then everybody's like, "Oh, it's 2022." I'm just like, "No, not really." And that's kind of like what happened with the stylist too, because I was like, "What year did this actually come out?" She was like, "Whatever you want to say,"
right?
Because there's been so many different releases, so it's kind of crazy that that's happening now, that people can't really find like an actual answer for something. But hey, there's so many ways for you to watch these movies. Just get all of the options you can, and that's what I'm doing.
when we hit Shudder, it was really cool because like people were watching it, and I would get really lovely messages from people on social media about it. And then again, like, it's a tiny movie that I was making for very personal reasons, and so I was never really worried about the legs that it would have. And when it hit, when it was released, we had a 4-star review in The Guardian, which I was very surprised by. When we've won awards, and I was just like, that none of this is making sense. And then when we hit Shudder, we were actually included. The New York Times has a monthly column of the 5 horror movies to stream right now, and we were included in that. That's awesome. So I was just out at lunch one day, and I get a message from Mcleod, and it has the link to the Times, just like, oh my God, we're in the New York Times. Like, it's insane that like any of this is happening.
This goes to show all your hard work, paid off.
Yeah,
people are loving it, and I love it. Aaron likes it. I when it came out, there's somebody else that I was talking to about this in our DMs before. I think I reached out to you. Like, this movie is freaking great. I'm like, it is. And I was like, maybe I should just reach out to Adam and see you'd want to come on. Like, yeah, let's do it. So it's always awesome when that stuff happens, because sometimes people can be a little difficult, but for the most part, all the people that we've had on the show have been so upbeat, and just like you,
just so humble. And
so it's awesome to be able to take the time away and talk to all these awesome people in the industry. So I really do thank you, Adam.
I think I think it's really cool to be able to talk about this with people, and to hear other people's interpretations of it. But like, the movie is dedicated to those who make us feel less alone. And I felt so alone when I was making it, or before I made it, that this was really kind of a desperate act to see if I was as alone as I felt. So by making this, I now know that I am not alone. I hear from people, and I get to talk to you guys, people like you, and it's really nice, because like I know, like, I don't feel alone anymore. But then that's good. I think because we were able to be very vulnerable and open with this, like, it's having the legacy that I hoped for, which is that I'm hearing from people who say, I'm going to throw this on when I'm feeling alone or down or whatever. Like, I'm going to throw this on when I need a hug. That's the best thing I could hear. Like, that's what I want, is for this movie to be a hug for those who need it.
That's awesome, man.
Like a comfort zone almost, something they go to, and that's awesome. And you put a piece of you into it too, like, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions that we have at this point as well. I know you were kind of talking about what you might have in the works, which I'm very, very excited to see if it comes to fruition. And I really hope it does, because I want to see more of your work, and kind of get in your head a little bit more on a different spectrum, instead of being down. I want to see a happy Adam, and crazy things happening in your film that are even more crazier than what happened in this one. Because there is some crazy stuff that happens in The Ghost Waits. And if you haven't seen this movie, go stream it on Shudder, buy the physical wherever you need to do, go stream it on Arrow's video service. There's a lot of options out there to watch A Ghost Waits, and I'm very, very excited for your future.
Thank you very much. It's on it. This is like Christmas, just getting to like talk with people that like it resonated with, and the fact that you guys wanted to talk about it, because again, it's such a small movie. Like you're not ever guaranteed that. So you know, we did a lot of press, but like definitely, you know, it's not like we're not going on late night shows and stuff like that. You don't have that whole apparatus. So it really means a lot that you reached out and wanted to talk about it.
Awesome. And you know, you're welcome on the show at any point. I always throw this to our guests, regardless of what they're doing, is if you ever want to come on and talk about a movie, we're always doing movie reviews, or if you just want to come on and just talk about anything, you're part of the family now, and I'm very, very happy to have spent some time and get to know you a little bit better. Even though it's not face to face, maybe one day if we ever get an actual like spot to do this that's not in a room in my apartment, that would be awesome to do, you know, in person interviews and stuff. But yeah,
maybe one day we can get Mcleod on here as well.
Oh, that would be awesome. Hell yeah, we can always get that planned.
Yeah.
But
is there anything you want to throw out there?
Yeah.
To let people know about?
You know, you can follow us. Mcleod and I are both on Twitter. I'm at Adam Stovall. He's at Mcleod Andrews. I think we're both on Instagram. I'm not Adam S. He's Brass Wall. The movie has its own web. You can go to ghostwaits.com. The movie has a Twitter as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know, it's the. I hope people check it out. I hope they like it. And if they feel like they want to reach out, feel free. We're both pretty responsive people. I've had to hide my social media just for like mental health stuff, but I still get like, yeah, every now and then you kind of check in and you're like, oh, this is nice, but then put it away again.
Yep.
Especially this week. It's like, I don't want to go anywhere near anything. But yeah, like I hope people check it out. I hope that, you know, they feel if they would like to reach out to us, please do. Because I like making this. Do you guys know Neutral Milk Hotel, the band Neutral Milk Hotel?
Sounds familiar.
I'm not 100% sure.
So they have an album, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, that was always kind of my reference point for this, because it's a very lo-fi album, but it's beautiful because it's so heartfelt. And there's this one song on there that's like 6.5 minutes long, and it was meant to be recorded in 2 takes and stitched together, but the guy ended up actually getting it all in one.
Oh wow.
And if you're listening, especially in headphones, as he's getting done, you can just hear somebody off go, holy shit. And it's because they're in the studio and they just can't believe what they saw, and they left it on the album. It makes me so happy. So it was like, you know, I kind of wanted to like both make something to see if I could, but also kind of make a thing that would empower someone like me who wants to make a movie but doesn't know how to get there, like doesn't come from any sort of access or, you know, or money or any of that stuff. Like how do you make your punk band's first album? Like that was the approach with this. So, you know, I hope that it works for people. And like, yeah, if anybody ever wants to reach out, a ghostwaits@gmail.com is a good, you know, you can email us. But yeah, like we're around, and I hope that you guys dig it. And again, thank you all very much for having me on.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming. And I'll put all of the all those links and emails and stuff in the description for anybody who wants to you know, check you out or reach out to you. But Adam, thank you so much for spending some time and talking about this awesome movie. It was great.
Thanks. I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Definitely.
This was the Barrens Hideout Podcast. I was your host, Dustin.
I was your co-host, Aaron.
And I was Adam Stovall, the director and writer of A Ghost Waits. Please
Goodbye.
go support this film.
Goodbye.
I'll see you guys later. Thank you.